Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now guys, the GBTification of the Christian faith that is being practiced by Nigerian churches is something that we have long since resigned to. So we are resigned to that is it's just a GBT enterprise. So now Nigerian churches are now exporting this GBT and wayo version of Christianity that they have mastered within their space into other countries. So they have conquered the African continent essentially with this wayo GBT Christianity that they practice. So they are now trying to export it now to Western countries. But of course, Western countries have something called law and order. So this thing that they are attempting now is not going to be an easy task for them. So with that, guys, I bring you this. UK government's probe uncovers massive fraud in Oyakhilome's Christ Embassy. So that's this headline. UK government's probe uncovers massive fraud in Oyakhilome's Christ Embassy. So now let's find out exactly what the Brits have uncovered regarding the 419 preacher men. After a 5-year-long investigation into the finances of United Kingdom branch of Christ Embassy, founded by popular mega church pastor Chris Oyakhilome, the UK Charity Commission has indicted the church's board of trustees of a wide range of fraudulent practices, including illegally paying more than 825 million naira, that's 1.767 pounds, to entities and organizations it shares close relationships with. According to the outcome of the inquiry published by the Charity Commission on its website last month, the church's board of trustees was incriminated for shoddy management of the church's account, arbitrary and curious payments, failure to comply with its grant-making policy, inadequate recording of its decision-making processes, and serious misconduct / or mismanagement in the charity's administration. In one particularly disturbing instance, the inquiry found evidence the church may be laundering or diverting funds of up to 288 million naira, that is 615,000 pounds approximately, from its UK branches to 6 accounts controlled by the church's Nigerian branches, Christ Embassy, Nigeria. The Charity Commission also found that the church, which was founded in 1999 and has over 90 worship centers across the United Kingdom, illegally registered 3 properties in the name of 2 members of its board of trustees, failed to pay taxes worth over 250,000 pounds on expenditures by its employees, failed to secure adequate insurance, and had an instance of criminal violation of British town planning and building regulation. So now this is now what they are finding against Christ Embassy. It does go on, and I'm not sure how much of this you will be able to digest. Let me just read through it because it's quite lengthy, so this video might carry on, but so be it. So this is the inquiry. In 2014, the Charity Commission, which regulates charity in England and Wales, announced it was opening a statutory inquiry to investigate Christ Embassy over a number of serious concerns relating to the use of charitable funds, in particular large connected party payment and the potential misapplication of grant funding. The commission had originally interviewed members of the church's board of trustees and perused the records and books of the church for a year. Still not convinced that the church had prudently managed its finances, it sidelined its board of trustees and appointed Rod Winston of the international audit and accounting firm Mazars as interim manager IM to take over the management of the church in what is described as a temporary and protective measure. In the final report of the inquiry published on November the 14th, the interim manager stated that the scope of the inquiry was to examine the church's transactions with partner organizations, including grants made to a number of unidentified entities and Love World Television Ministry, Healing School, International School of Ministry, Christ Embassy France, Christ Embassy Canada, IPCC Conference, and Rhapsody of Realities. The inquiry also covered the administration, governance, and management of the charity by the trustees with specific regard to connected party transactions in respect of payment to Love World Limited and the management of conflicts of interest, its financial control and management, as well as whether or not the trustees had complied with and fulfilled their duties and responsibilities as trustees under charity law. Payments to partner organizations. So this is the next subheading, payments to partner organizations. After going through the church's account between 2009 and 2011, the inquiry team found that its board of trustees paid substantial grants to organizations classified as partner organizations in clear violation of its grant-making policy and the Charity Commission's regulation. During 2009 to 2011, the charity's accounts shows grant amounting to £1.281666 million were paid to Love World Television Ministry, 118,000 approximately to Healing School, 181,000 approximately again, and I am doing the approximation because the actual sums are here, but I don't want to read through it. So 186,000 pounds approximately to International School of Ministry, 10,000 pounds to Christ Embassy Canada, 10,000 pounds approximately to Christ Embassy France, 37,000 pounds to IPPC Conference, and 77,000 pounds approximately to Rhapsody of Reality, the report stated. However, despite telling the inquiry team that its grant-making practice consisted of a discussion by the trustees at a trustee meeting regarding who should receive grant, the interim manager IM, so this is now the person that was appointed, the interim manager IM found no evidence of compliance with the said grant making policy. Documents examined by the IM demonstrated a lack of records and receipts to account for grants made, and there appeared to be little consideration given to whether the receiving parties had expended grants appropriately and for intended purposes as was required by the policy. This demonstrates a failure to comply with its grant-making policy and inadequate recording of decision-making by the trustees, which are misconduct and or mismanagement in the administration of the charity. The inquiry particularly found the transaction with Love World Limited curious. The board of trustees told the interim manager that the company, which is owned by a trustee of the church, Obioma Chukwuemeka, from 2009 to 2015, with the objective to advance Christian programming in the United Kingdom and to provide entertainment and educational program on radio and television, was paid for broadcasting services. But when told to provide documentation of the decisions made by the board in relation to the payment to Love World, the church only provided 2 sets of minutes of trustees' meetings that appeared relevant to the issue. However, neither set of minutes include any decision or resolution to make payments to a company of which one trustee was the sole shareholder, the report stated. So that already tells you that Nigeria Move, now clear LGBT there, the trustee did not have any formal contract in place or indeed rationale for using Love World Limited as opposed to any other broadcaster, it added. During his inspection of books and records, found no evidence to suggest that any of the trustees considered whether the cost charged by Love World Limited were better value than the cost charged by any other service provider. The trustees have failed to take or have failed to record any proper decisions as to why such payments are in the best interest of the charity, the report further stated. The report stated that Christ Embassy had failed to follow a 2009 recommendation by auditors to seek professional advice on payment to related parties. The inquiry also found that the church allowed Love World Limited to use its £1.8 million property for free between 2006 and 2012. When queried about this, the trustee told the inquiry team that Love World Limited occupied a small part of the premises on an informal basis. They said Love World Limited was subsequently charged £75,000 per year for the use of the property. However, the inquiry stated that due to the level of rent Love World was subsequently charged, it must have occupied a substantial portion of the property. The inquiry also found that the church was subsidizing a proportion of Love World Limited's utility bills. These actions were not in the charity's best interest or in furtherance of its objectives and were misconducts and or mismanagement in the administration of the charity. So we go on to the next sub-headline: payment to Ventaja Limited. Payment to Ventaja Limited. The inquiry also discovered that in 2013, the church paid Ventaja Limited £44,925 for construction and decoration of a stage. It, however, found that the company was wholly owned by a member of the church's board of trustees, Tony Obi. So he owned it from 2014 to 2015, who was also a zonal pastor of the church. It further revealed that Obi's wife, a director of Ventaja, was a pastor of the church and salaried employee. The IM found evidence indicating that Trustee G had employed the services of Ventaja Limited to provide services to the charity, but it was unclear from the charity's records what considerations were made regarding potential conflicts of interest. It is unclear to the Commission that the decision-making trustees in position at the time payments were made were acting only in the interest of the charity. The trustees failed to provide any record to evidence that conflicts of interest had been identified or correctly managed prior to the opening of the inquiry. So now this is now a detailed inquiry into the affairs of this church. So this is the next sub-headline: possible money laundering and diversion of funds. So now this is now a serious charge: possible money laundering and diversion of funds. The investigation identified 9 active bank accounts which the church's board of trustees claimed was holding funds belonging to Christ Embassy Nigeria, a separate entity from Christ Embassy UK. However, there was no evidence that the banks holding the funds were aware that they were holding funds belonging to Christ Embassy Nigeria. The report stated that the accounts were not named in a sure way to indicate that the funds were controlled from Nigeria. In fact, 2 of the 9 active accounts were named Christ Embassy East London. First, the inquiry placed a freezing order on the funds. So that was £615,420 that was in the account. The inquiry, not being satisfied that the funds held in this account were owned by Christ Embassy Nigeria, exercised legal powers and issued orders dated 8th of August 2014 under sections 76(3)(d) of the Act, freezing 6 of these 9 accounts, protecting funds to a value of £615,420. In the absence of clear evidence to support the trustees' position, the inquiry concluded that the funds held in the accounts belonged to the charity, and these accounts remained frozen until the order was revoked on the 24th of August 2016. The inquiry being satisfied that the new board of trustees had assumed control of the charity's property discharged the freezing order on the 24th of August 2016. So now we go on to the tax issues, and you know that Oyinbo people do not joke with the taxes. So tax issues. The inquiry also discovered that the church maintained a shoddy tax record, such as the failure to submit its self-assessment returns for 2010 to 2011, 2012 to 2013 on time, thereby incurring penalties. It further found that the church did not maintain sufficient records or processes to show that expenditures by employees had not been an employee benefit and therefore subject to tax, as well as kept sufficient records to show that the charity's vehicles were being used solely for charitable purposes and not used by trustees/employees for personal use. The interim manager agreed to pay £250,000 to settle these violations with Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, HMRC. So hidden properties. We go on to hidden properties. The inquiry team also discovered 3 properties in the UK that were not disclosed by the Board of Trustees. The legal titles of the properties were vested in the name of 2 of the charity's trustees. When asked about the properties, the church's Board of Trustees claimed that they were acquired on behalf of and held in trust for Christ Embassy in Nigeria. However, the inquiry team noted that the land registry entries in respect of the 3 properties made no reference to the beneficial owner being Christ Embassy in Nigeria, and documentations supplied by the trustees provided no evidence to support their assertion. None of the land registry proprietorship registrars differed in any material way from those of the properties originally disclosed to the Commission as belonging to the charity. These matters were explored further by the IM. His investigations confirmed that the properties were held legally and beneficially by the charity and that there were no trust in place, suggesting they were held on behalf of Christ Embassy Nigeria. The inquiry obtained evidence that the trustees failed to ensure land registry details for the charity properties were amended once trustees resigned. This was raised a number of times by auditors in their reports from 2009 onwards, and as a result, the trustees failed in their duty and responsibilities as trustees to act in the charity's best interest. So it goes on to speak about inadequate insurance cover, so we'll just leave that one because it is now getting to quite a lengthy video. And then it goes on to speak about planning violations as well, not having the proper planning permissions. So we'll skip that one as well. So that's just them not conforming to council regulations. So we go on to penalties, which seems to be the last stanza of this. Having found widespread evidence of misconduct and or mismanagement, the interim management exercised its powers to remove 2 of the trustees of the church, name not disclosed. However, the said trustees resigned before the commission could complete the process. The report, however, said the loopholes that allowed trustees to be removed, which stopped them from acting as trustees in the future, has been closed by an amendment of the Charity Protection and Social Investment Act 2016, thereby allowing the Commission to proceed to remove a charity trustee who has resigned, following the Commission having given notice to the charity trustee of its intention to make a removal order. The interim manager also appointed a new board of trustee for the church in 2016, having discharged his duty. The interim manager also considered asking former trustees of the church to pay restitution for breaches of duties and losses the church suffered, but decided against it after professional advice. So now this is now a detailed report on Christ Embassy in the UK. So as I started off, these people are GBT merchants really, and they play fast and loose with the laws and the processes in Nigeria. But of course, Nigeria is a lawless country anyway. We all know that. So really, them just discounting laws and regulations and record keeping in Nigeria is nothing that means anything. Everybody does that. The government itself has no record keeping. So how can you expect an organization or even the citizens to have a record keeping practices? So, but because now they're so satiated and marinated in that sort of practices, they have now brought those practices now, and they've taken it around Africa, by the way, as we discussed in the opening phase of this video. They are now bringing it into the international community. But the international community, as I said, is all about two things: law and order. They would rather you pay 1 penny in tax if that is the penny due, but they will spend £3 million to chase you down for not paying 1 penny in tax. It's not because they're being pedantic or being parochial. It is really because the processes have been set and it has to be observed. And if it's not observed, or if one person is allowed to get away with not observing, paying taxes and following the rules, then that is the first step to anarchy. So they understand that. So they will go to any length to ensure that their processes is observed. But then, of course, your wayo man, your Pastor 419 coming from Nigeria, haven't chanced all of the chances that you can chance in Nigeria, now coming with that mindset is only going to be pulled up short in a country like the UK, and that is exactly what has happened. But of course, the punitive measures in the UK are not as draconian as they would be in a place like Nigeria. So all they get is a slap on the wrist, and they're barred from being trustees again. Then they can just use their wife, their sons, their etc. An avalanche of people they can use as proxy. So they just use a proxy and carry on. These are people that have already surrendered their reputation to greed, so they don't really care so long as they can carry on looting. So carry on looting, but not in this place, is what the United Kingdom is saying to Oyakhilome and his cohorts. What do you make of this move now that's been made by the United Kingdom authorities against Christ Embassy and Chris Oyakhilome? Come tell me what you are making of this narrative in the comment section. But before you do that, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. The bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come tell me what you are making of law and order in Nigeria versus the UK in the comment section. So I'll leave you here. Carry on with you in the comment section. But here I say peace.